On a cold winter night in Jackson Township, Ohio, just past 9 p.m., a desperate call echoed through the wintry chaos. A father, voice cracking with urgency, dialed the emergency services. Ling Xiao, a local restaurant owner, reported his daughter, 5-year-old Ashley Jiao, missing. He had last seen her playing near the kitchen of their family-owned restaurant, Ang's Asian Cuisine. As the hours ticked by, his panic mounted. Prayers were whispered in the community that if someone had taken her, they would find it in their hearts to bring her back. The distress in the voices of Ashley's parents was palpable, a stark contrast to the serene snowfall that veiled the township. This story was not just about a missing child. It was about betrayal in its most heart-wrenching form. It was about unraveling the mind of one of the most diabolical mothers to ever walk the earth. The setting was Jackson Township, Ohio, where the seemingly ordinary Chin family owned a local Chinese restaurant. But beneath the facade of normalcy lurked a chilling secret that would soon shatter their small town's tranquility. Mingming Chin and Ling Xiao, the couple who owned the restaurant, harbored a dark secret that the community could never have imagined. Their daughter, Ashley, was soon discovered not missing but concealed within the very walls of the restaurant that had been their family's pride. The news of this horrifying discovery sent shockwaves through the community, drawing family, friends, and strangers to Ang's Asian Cuisine one fateful Tuesday night to confirm the ghastly news. Mingming and Liang's story began years earlier. Both were immigrants from China who had sought the American dream in Ohio. They opened Ang's Asian Cuisine, pouring their hopes and efforts into the establishment. The restaurant was their slice of America, a place where they could start anew. But in 2017, their dream turned into a nightmare when the police received a frantic call from the restaurant. The background of Mingming was as complicated as it was intriguing. She had embarked on a daring journey from China to the USA, facilitated by an underground network that cost her a staggering $220,000. This perilous path brought her to New York and eventually to Ohio, where she met Liang, who had his own story of ambition and survival after arriving in the U.S. in the late 90s. In 2008, Mingming faced another battle as she applied for asylum based on her religious beliefs as a practitioner of Falun Gong, a spiritual practice persecuted in China. Despite her efforts, inconsistencies in her testimony led to a denial of her asylum request, and she faced the threat of deportation. Meanwhile, Liang and Mingming tried to build a stable life. They married and had 2 children, Jojo and Ashley. They also took over the running of a restaurant in North Canton, Ohio, a place previously managed by Liang's family. The restaurant business was demanding, and balancing it with family life was a constant struggle. In 2011, with the birth of Ashley, the challenges only grew. Mingming made the difficult decision to send Ashley and her sister Jojo to New York to live with their grandparents, a separation that lasted 2 years. This decision, made out of necessity, would later weigh heavily on the family. When the girls returned to Ohio in 2015, the dynamics within the family had shifted. Ashley displayed signs of rebelliousness, a challenge amplified by the pressures of managing the restaurant. The financial strain and personal frustrations began to take a toll on Liang, who became increasingly abusive towards Mingming. Despite these mounting pressures, the family continued to operate the restaurant, with the children often present, blending into the background or occasionally interacting with customers. Ashley, though challenging at times, was known to charm patrons with her bright smile. However, everything changed on the evening of January 9, 2017. That night, a call to the police shattered the ordinary routine of the local law enforcement and marked the beginning of a harrowing ordeal that would expose the hidden horrors within a seemingly normal family. This was the night Ashley Jiao was reported missing, setting off a chain of events that would reveal the grim reality behind her disappearance. Ling, still on the phone with the emergency responder, detailed the distressing situation unfolding at their restaurant, Ang's Asian Cuisine, located at 4924 Port Street. I can't find my daughter," he reported, his voice strained with worry. In less than 3 minutes of making the 911 call, while Ling was still on the line with the dispatcher, an officer from the Jackson Township Police Department was already at his door. With a 5-year-old potentially stranded on the streets in the Ohio cold, Ashley was in grave danger. The Ohio Attorney General's office quickly issued a missing child alert for Ashley, and the scene at the parking lot was frantic. The Bureau of Criminal Investigation, part of the Attorney General's office, had arrived, signifying the gravity of the search. The FBI and the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation were called in to assist. They suspected that Ashley might have wandered out the back door while her parents were engrossed in their restaurant duties. Although she had done so on previous occasions, the weather this time was extremely cold and treacherous. Breaking news shook the community as the search for little 5-year-old Ashley commenced. The search party extended their efforts to a wooded area behind the community. Douglas Panarella, who worked across the street and frequented Ang's Asian cuisine, expressed his concern. "When I leave work today, I am going to drive around the back. I'm going to do my own little search." The fear was that Ashley had wandered out and gotten lost, especially given the thick brush and water between the Strip shopping plaza and State College. The search faced challenges due to low visibility in the blizzard. The Jackson Township Fire Department deployed drones for a quicker scan of the area, while investigators simultaneously searched inside the restaurant. The unsettling realization emerged that no one had witnessed Ashley wandering off, leaving the possibility that she might still be inside, perhaps stuck somewhere in a dryer or cubbyhole. A thorough search of the entire restaurant started again. The public was urged to be on the lookout for the little girl, last seen wearing a purple winter coat and gray leggings. Despite the family's tragic situation, they opted not to make a personal plea in the media. Investigators also called for information from anyone who had been at the family's restaurant on the Monday in question. "We worked very hard on this case, and the one thing we wanted at the end of the day was to recover that girl alive," stated one investigator. Search efforts faced challenging weather conditions, with some investigators battling the cold and snowy conditions outside, while others stayed inside the restaurant, treating it potentially as a crime scene. Then, during a search in the kitchen, investigators discovered a crawl space above the walk-in freezer that hadn't been explored. Yet, it was large enough for a child to squeeze into. Upon opening it, they found a container filled with what appeared to be salt. It took them a moment to realize a small hand was poking out of the salt. It was Ashley. Ashley was found dead. The innocent child had never gone missing. She was hidden away, concealed by her own parents within the walls of their restaurant. Her body was swiftly taken to the medical examiner's office, where the autopsy revealed she had suffered severe injuries to both her head and body. The news was nothing short of devastating. The pieces began falling into place. Ling's startled reaction when told by the first responder that the police were already at the scene, the family's decision not to make a personal plea on the media, the absence of eyewitnesses who saw Ashley leaving the restaurant, it all started to make sense. Mingming and Ling were arrested. Mingming faced charges of murder and felonious assault, while Ling was charged with complicity to murder and felonious assault. Both were held on a $5 million bond. The high bond reflected Mingming's undocumented status and the risk of her fleeing. Similar concerns existed about Ling if he was released. Outside the family's restaurant, a makeshift memorial formed. Grief-stricken, members of the public left stuffed animals, bouquets of flowers, and condolence cards. That night, a steady stream of people gathered for a vigil in Ashley's memory in front of the restaurant. Emotions ran high as attendees shared their disbelief and sorrow. "I just can't believe a mom can do that to her child," a mourner expressed, a sentiment that echoed through the crowd. The attendees reflected on the tragedy, many mentioning they had never seen any signs of abuse or neglect and always saw Ashley as simply adorable. Maggie Wells, a 12-year-old who, along with her mother, frequented the restaurant, recalled their encounters with Ashley. "She was always so engaged in her coloring books," Maggie remembered, noting how they once gave Ashley a coloring book and crayons. As the community struggled to come to terms with the horrific events, people who knew the family, especially Ling, found it hard to reconcile the man they knew with the crimes he was charged with. They couldn't fathom that Ling would ever intentionally harm his daughters. As soon as Mingming and Ling were arrested, they were separated and taken to different interrogation rooms. Early in the questioning, when Mingming was informed of Ashley's death, she showed no emotion. This lack of response was chilling. Was it a grieving mother's coping mechanism, or was she truly heartless? In her interview, Mingming described Ashley as a difficult child who changed dramatically after returning from New York. She claimed Ashley refused to listen and would lash out at her sister. When asked how she responded to Ashley's behavior, Mingming shockingly admitted to physically disciplining her. Her justifications for her actions were twisted. She portrayed herself as a victim of her circumstances, blaming her in-laws and her struggle with managing the restaurant. "I have only 2 hands. I'm not a 4-handed girl," she lamented during the interrogation, highlighting the immense pressure she felt. The interrogators were struck by her emotionless demeanor. "You don't have nothing left? Isn't that what you told me? You don't have no tears left. Your daughter is dead." An interrogator pressed, trying to elicit some sign of genuine emotion from her. Her answers became increasingly direct and concise. "How did she die?" "I killed her." "How did you kill her?" "Just killed her." Her admissions were stark and devoid of any apparent remorse. When asked specifically how she inflicted the fatal injuries, Mingming simply responded, "You had to do that." Throughout the interrogation, she maintained that Ashley never listened to her or her husband. Her repeated requests to speak with her husband were denied. When questioned about what happened to Ashley's body, Mingming chillingly replied, "I told my husband to take care of it, and I don't know how he took care of it." The community, law enforcement, and everyone involved were left to grapple with the grim reality of a life so tragically lost and the incomprehensible actions of a parent. The case not only highlighted the darkest capabilities of human nature, but also shattered the idyllic image of a family that many had believed the Shaos to be. "I told my husband to take care of it," Mingming confessed, admitting her role in the tragic death of her daughter. She revealed that she had beaten Ashley to death and that her husband, Ling, had helped her manage the aftermath, including the disposal of the body. In the other interrogation room, Ling Xiao was being interviewed. Unaware of his wife's full confession, he initially maintained his innocence. However, as the interrogation progressed, his defenses began to crumble, and he eventually disclosed the grim details of that fateful morning. "Yesterday morning, we got up, prepped JoJo for school, and I took her there. When I came back, my wife was very angry with Ashley because she had soiled her diaper. It might not seem like a big deal, but Ashley is 5 years old and still not toilet trained," Ling explained. He painfully recounted the incident. "My wife lost her temper and hit Ashley's head against the carpet a couple of times. Initially, she was still breathing." "And did you see your wife do this?" the investigator pressed. "Yes," Ling replied. "At what time did this happen?" "Roughly around 9:15, I guess. I'm not sure of the exact time." Ling continued, describing the horrifying moments that followed. Ashley was lying on the floor, breathing heavily and abnormally, but there was no blood. Then, suddenly, her condition worsened. She started gasping for air, and it became clear something was gravely wrong. I tried to comfort her, and suddenly I couldn't feel her heartbeat anymore. I panicked and tried to perform CPR, but then we realized she was gone." Ling's voice broke as he recounted the attempts to revive his daughter. Confronted with the reality of Ashley's death, Mingming and Ling were terrified of the consequences if they called the authorities. They feared losing everything they had built. In desperation, they concocted a plan to make Ashley's death appear like an abduction or an accidental death. "We talked about it a lot. We were both scared," Ling admitted. "Eventually, we decided to bring her to the restaurant. We thought if JoJo saw her there, she could tell people Ashley was at the restaurant and might have left through the back door or had an accident." With this grim plan in place, Ming and Ling transported Ashley's body to the restaurant. They positioned her in the back room where she usually slept, hoping to persuade their other daughter, 6-year-old JoJo, that Ashley was merely sleeping. JoJo wouldn't lie, Ling said, justifying their decision to involve their young daughter unwittingly in their scheme. "We didn't want JoJo to lie. We just wanted her to see Ashley there and say she saw her sleeping." Throughout that day, as they served customers and went about their business, the weight of their actions lay heavy on their hearts. Ling attempted to rationalize their decisions by portraying his wife in a different light. "My wife is a good person. Look at JoJo. She's fine, and Ming has been a good mother to her. It's just, everything got out of control with Ashley," Ling tried to explain, his voice tinged with desperation and sorrow. When asked why he didn't take a more active role in raising Ashley himself, Ling's response pointed to the overwhelming demands of their business. "I was running the restaurant. I couldn't take care of everything. I trusted my mom to help, but things just got worse. Ling revealed that the abuse began shortly after Ashley's arrival from New York. At first, it wasn't that bad, but Ashley's inability to be toilet-trained really upset my wife, he said, offering a glimpse into the escalating tension that led to the tragic events. Getting back to last night, you actually cooked and served meals while your daughter was lying there? The investigator asked, incredulous. Yes, Ling replied, the gravity of their actions written across his face. We went on as usual. The plan was simple yet morbid. To deceive JoJo into thinking everything was normal so that if questioned, she would innocently corroborate their story. But the reality of their actions was far from normal, and the consequences of their choices were about to unravel completely. Ling Zhao's chilling admission continued as he described how they concealed Ashley's body. I would hide her up on top of the walk-in freezer, and then when we called the police at night, JoJo could verify that she was there, he explained. Ling, fully aware of his daughter JoJo's innocence and vulnerability, exploited it to execute their grim plan. JoJo's not a liar, but she's 6. When you point her in a direction, that's where she's going to go. Ling then detailed how he placed Ashley's body into a plastic container and stowed it in the walk-in freezer to prevent any odor. I moved her to the walk-in freezer, put her in that plastic container so that she wouldn't stink. It was one of those bus tubs used in restaurants, he recounted. We were hoping that when the police came, they would just ask around, and we didn't expect all these questions or that so many people would get involved. If we knew that hundreds of people would be searching, maybe more. I am so sorry, Ling expressed his remorse, overwhelmed by the scale of the search and investigation that followed. When pressed about what he planned to do after the investigation quieted down, Ling's response revealed the dark depths of his despair and desperation. We didn't really know. Burn it, bury it, or throw it in the ocean. Those were the only things we could think of. One of the reasons I confessed is the realization that if I went through with this and didn't get caught, I'd be looking over my shoulder forever. 2 days after the arrest, a custody hearing for JoJo took place. It was determined that she would remain under the custody of Stark County Job and Family Services. Meanwhile, details of Ming Ming's plight to stay in the United States became public, shedding light on her immigration status. Local Falun Gong practitioners expressed outrage, emphasizing that the teachings of Falun Gong advocate for truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. They argued that if Ming Ming truly practiced their faith, someone in the community would recognize her, suggesting she might have used the faith as a reason to seek asylum. It was decided that Ashley would be laid to rest in New York, where Liang's family resided. In September, Liang dramatically changed his plea in court, pleading guilty to obstructing justice, corpse abuse, tampering with evidence, and endangering children. This decision was part of a plea agreement where he agreed to testify against Ming Ming in her upcoming trial in exchange for a 12-year sentence. During the interrogation, Ming Ming had repeatedly asked to speak with Liang. She confided in a psychologist that Liang was responsible for Ashley's death, instructing her to tell investigators that she was the culprit. Liang allegedly explained that if Ming Ming confessed, he could be released to care for JoJo, warning that otherwise, JoJo would be placed in foster care. Ultimately, Ming Ming also agreed to a plea deal and was sentenced to 22 years in prison, with the stipulation that she would be deported to China upon completing her sentence. Ling received a 12-year sentence. JoJo was initially under the temporary custody of Stark County Job and Family Services, but was eventually allowed to live with relatives in New York, where her sister Ashley was buried. By the time her parents would be released, JoJo would be a grown adult, capable of protecting herself. In memory of Ashley Zhao, the plea to the audience is to subscribe to true crime stories, raising awareness and encouraging justice for those who need it the most. Through subscribing, sharing, and engaging with the content, viewers can stand with the channel in making a difference and ensuring tragic stories like Ashley's do not go unnoticed.